From a movie so disappointing that fans pretend it never happened, just to protect the perfect trilogy, to a sequel that dragged a dying studio back from the grave and made the whole world fall in love all over again. This is how a final movie in a franchise determines its legacy. Starting with the infamous final Kung Fu Panda movie. For 8 long years, fans begged for one more adventure with Po, the clumsy panda who became the Dragon Warrior and saved the Valley of Peace more times than anyone could count. So when Kung Fu Panda 4 was finally announced, the hype was through the roof. But what they got was a movie that spends its whole runtime trying to take the Dragon Warrior title away from the very hero they showed up to see. It starts with Master Shifu telling Po that his time is up, that he's got to become the spiritual leader of the Valley of Peace and hand the Dragon Warrior title to someone brand new.
Whoa! I don't know what that means.
And that someone he finds is Zen, a fast-talking fox thief he literally throws in jail before the two are forced to work together.
How did someone like you become the Dragon Warrior?
That's a mystery for you to solve during your 2-year stay at the Valley of Peace prison.
Valley of Peace prison? Sounds like a daycare.
Meanwhile, a new villain slithers in, the Chameleon, a tiny lizard sorceress who can shapeshift into anyone she wants, and is hunting Po's Staff of Wisdom so she can rip open a doorway to the spirit realm. She drags back every legendary villain Po ever defeated. Tai Lung, Lord Shen, Kai, the scariest faces in the whole franchise. But instead of an epic rematch, the movie just lets her steal their powers and toss them aside. Then Zen, who turns out had been working for the Chameleon the entire time, finally switches sides. So Po hands her the staff. She takes the villain down, and Po names her the next Dragon Warrior. But that's the part that broke fans the most, because the Furious Five, the heart and soul of these movies, barely show up at all, getting one silent cameo, while the movie wastes its time on jokes that just don't land. So how did it actually go over? Not well. On IMDb, it sits at a 6.3 out of 10, the lowest of the whole franchise has ever scored, and critics handed it the worst reviews the series had ever gotten. The famous running out of steam verdict. But the real damage was with the people who grew up on these movies. I think the fan base agrees it was a lazy step down that made the whole world feel smaller, and a lot of them just decided to pretend it never happened, so the perfect trilogy could stay perfect in their memory. But Kung Fu Panda is far from the only franchise that forgot what made it special. Up next is a series that's been coasting on the same formula for years. Despicable Me 4. By the time Despicable Me 4 rolled around, Gru had gone from a supervillain trying to steal the moon to a tired dad with a brand new baby and absolutely nothing left to prove. And that's kind of the whole problem. The story kicks off when Gru, now an agent for the Anti-Villain League, busts an old high school rival named Maxime Lemao, a French villain who turns himself into a human cockroach. Maxime swears revenge, breaks out of prison, and comes hunting for the one thing that'll hurt Gru the most: his baby son, Gru Jr. So the League hides the whole family away in a quiet town under fake names, where Gru has to pretend to be a boring solar panel salesman, while a nosy teenage neighbor sniffs out his secret and blackmails him into pulling a heist.
That's not me. I don't even see a resemblance. Clearly you have the wrong guy, as I sell solar panels.
And if that already sounds like a lie, that's because it is. On top of all of that, the movie crams in a squad of minions who get superpowers and become the Mega Minions. A fake identity comedy, a blackmail subplot, and a full revenge story, all fighting for room in barely 90 minutes. None of it ever really connects, because every time one piece starts to get going, the movie yanks you over to another one, so nothing ever gets the space to actually land. Then it all wraps up exactly the way you knew it would, with Maxime beaten, the baby saved, and Gru back home like none of it ever happened. Before the credits roll on Gru and his old rival singing a pop song together. And honestly, that emptiness is the whole story of how this one landed. Critics mostly just shrugged, calling it the moment the series stopped being about a character and started being about keeping the minion money machine rolling. It's not that anyone really hated it. It sits on a 6.2 on IMDb, and plenty of kids had a blast. But I think the fan base agrees that this was the film that confirmed the thing they've been quietly feared for years, that the heart of the original Despicable Me is long gone. And what's left is a fun, forgettable cash grab built to sell more yellow toys. But as empty as Despicable Me 4 felt, it at least had characters the world genuinely loved once. The next franchise never really had that, and its newest entry only made it more obvious. Trolls Band Together. The big twist of Trolls Band Together is that Branch, the grumpy survivalist from the first two movies, used to be the baby of a famous boy band called Brozone, made up of him and his 4 older brothers. Years ago, they chased something called the perfect family harmony, the one magical note only a family in total sync can hit. But their egos got in the way. The band fell apart, and the brothers scattered to the wind. So when one of those 4 brothers, Floyd, gets kidnapped, the movie finally has its hook. 2 wannabe pop stars named Velvet and Veneer trap Floyd inside a diamond bottle, and literally drain the talent right out of him to make themselves famous. And the only thing in the world that can shatter that diamond is the perfect family harmony. So Branch and Poppy set off to track down his estranged brothers and put the band back together, before Floyd gets squeezed dry for good. What follows is a colorful road trip from one long-lost brother to the next, where the boys keep trying to nail that perfect harmony and keep falling apart over old wounds.
Whoa, why do you think I left? So no one would treat me like you did.
You know what, Spruce?
It's Bruce! Thank you, Clay!
Guys, we can't forget about Floyd.
Look, Branch is right. We're here for Floyd. Let's just get this done and we can go our separate ways.
Fine.
And it all builds to the moment Floyd is drained down to almost nothing, only for the brothers to finally understand they were never supposed to be perfect, just together. They hit the harmony, save Floyd's life, the villains get exactly what's coming to them, and the band rides off happy. And honestly, it's fine. And that's the whole problem. It's bright and loud, and the animation pops, and the soundtrack's wall-to-wall pop hits. But under all the glitter, there's almost nothing there. It's a story you've seen hundreds of times, dressed up as a feature-length excuse to replay songs you already know and sell another shelf of toys. Critics waved it through as harmless filler with clear signs of a franchise running out of fumes. And I think the fan base agrees this was the one where Trolls stopped even pretending to be a real movie and fully became a karaoke playlist with a plot stapled on. Still, Trolls went out bright, loud, and still loved by little kids. The next franchise didn't even get that. It limped to the finish line and got quietly dumped onto streaming where almost nobody would notice it was the end. Hotel Transylvania Transformania. Transformania kicks off with Dracula finally ready to retire and hand his beloved hotel over to his daughter Mavis and her goofy human husband Johnny. But Drac can't stand the thought of Johnny redecorating the place. So he panics and lies, telling him there's some made-up monster law that says only a monster is allowed to own the hotel. That one lie blows up the whole movie. Johnny's so desperate to become a monster that Van Helsing zaps him with a machine that turns humans into monsters and monsters into humans, and Johnny gets his wish and transforms into a giant dragon. But when Drac tries to zap him back, he accidentally turns himself human instead and smashes the crystal that powers the whole thing. So now a powerless human Dracula and a monster Johnny have to race across the world to find another crystal before Johnny's transformation turns permanent and he loses his mind for good. What's supposed to be the heart of it is Drac and Johnny finally bonding on the road and learning to finally see each other as family. And there's a decent little story buried in there about a dad accepting the goofy kid who married his daughter. They fix everything. Johnny turns back, the hotel gets rebuilt, and the Drac Pack get their happy ending. But this was the end of the road for Hotel Transylvania, and you can feel it in every frame. Adam Sandler didn't come back to play Dracula. Gendy Tartakovsky, the guy whose wild style made those movies pop in the first place, didn't direct it. And the studio didn't even believe in it enough to put it in theaters. They sold it off and quietly dropped it on streaming where it would disappear without anybody making a fuss. So a franchise that used to be a real event just slipped out the back door. And I think the fan base agrees it's easily the weakest out of the bunch, in a pretty sad way for a series people grew up with to go out. So that's 4 movies that took something people loved and sent it out worse than they found it. But a final movie doesn't have to be a funeral. Sometimes it's the thing that drags a franchise back from the dead and reminds everyone why they fell in love in the first place. And the best place to start is the cat who pulled off exactly that. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. Nobody was asking for another Puss in Boots movie. The first one came out all the way back in 2011, did fine, and then pretty much faded from everyone's minds. So when a sequel finally showed up more than a decade later, most people just shrugged, and then it turned out to be one of the best things DreamWorks has made in years. The setup's genuinely dark for a kids movie. Puss, the fearless swashbuckling legend who never thinks twice about throwing himself into danger, finds out he's already burned through 8 of his 9 lives, which means the next time he dies, that's it. And right after he learns this, He runs into a hooded wolf, who whistles through the dark and beats him in a duel for the first time in his life.
The legend. Gato.
Puss gets so terrified that he quits being a hero altogether and hides away as a quiet little house cat. But he can't stay hidden, because he hears about a wishing star that grants one single wish, and he decides he's gonna wish his 9 lives back.
The wishing star. It does exist.
That star has one wish to grant.
One wish.
Think of what that could mean for us.
9 lives. Yes.
So he sets off with his old flame, Kitty Softpaws, the girl he once left at the altar, and a relentlessly happy little dog named Perito, who refuses to see the bad in anything. They race a crime family of bears and a greedy maniac called Jack Horner for the map. But the real threat is that wolf, who finally reveals himself as death itself, hunting Puss down for taking all his lives for granted.
But I think we've reached the end now, you and I.
Instead of some big magic showdown, the whole climax is Puss finally turning around and facing his own fear of dying, standing his ground against death until even death backs off. He gives up the wish once he realizes 1 life lived fully beats 9 lives wasted, and he walks away having actually grown. And under all the sword fights and talking cats, that's the scary truth the movie quietly gets at. That none of us get forever, and the bravest thing you can do is stop wasting the time you've actually got. So a movie nobody wanted ended up sitting around 95% on Rotten Tomatoes, getting called the best thing in the Shrek universe since Shrek 2, and kicking off the bold new animation style DreamWorks still leans on today. It didn't just work, it dragged the whole studio's reputation back to life, and I think the fan base agrees that this is the one that reminded everybody DreamWorks could still make real magic. And if Puss in Boots proved a sequel can be great, the next movie proved one can be a flat-out masterpiece. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Miles Morales is settling into life as Brooklyn Spider-Man when his old friend Gwen Stacy drops back into his world, and following her pulls him into something way bigger than his neighborhood. He gets yanked across the multiverse and finds out there's an entire society of spider people from hundreds of different worlds, all led by a grim, no-nonsense Spider-Man named Miguel O'Hara. Up in the Spider Society, Miguel explains that every Spider-Man's life is built on certain tragedies he calls canon events, painful things like losing someone they love, and that these moments had to happen or the whole universe falls apart. Then Miles realizes the next canon event on the list is the death of his own father. And the second he says he refuses to let it happen, the entire Spider Society turns on him.
I'm not asking.
Miguel, just give him the second.
Great look. And it gets crueler. Miguel reveals that Miles was never supposed to be Spider-Man, that the spider that bit him came from another dimension by accident, which in their eyes makes Miles a mistake. The one anomaly that never should have existed. So the kid who spent 2 whole movies earning the mask gets told by every other Spider-Man that he doesn't belong, and he has to fight his way out and race home to save his dad anyway. And the gut punch is the movie doesn't even let him get there. He lands in the wrong universe, realizes too late he's been in the wrong place this whole time, and it ends right there on a cliffhanger, with Miles trapped and his friends scrambling to reach him. Normally, ending a movie mid-sentence would make people furious. Instead, they walked out calling it a masterpiece. It sits around an 8.5 on IMDb, which puts it up with the highest rated animated movies ever, and it somehow managed to top a first film that already won the Oscar. Every single universe in it is drawn in its own art style, so the whole thing looks like the comic book came to life. And I think the fan base agrees, it didn't just continue the story, it raised the ceiling for the entire genre. And if Spider-Verse proved animation could be art, the next movie proved a franchise could wait almost a decade and still come back better than ever. Zootopia 2. Zootopia 2 picks up with Judy Hopps and Nick Wilde finally partnered up as cops. And right away, the city they thought they knew gets flipped upside down by the arrival of a mysterious snake named Gary the Snake. Zootopia is supposed to be a city of mammals, so a reptile showing up sends everybody into a panic. And Gary is busy grabbing secrets and stealing an old book that hints the whole city is built on a lie. Most people would write Gary off as the bad guy, but Judy does the one thing that makes her Judy. She chooses to trust him. And that choice puts her and Nick on the run, hunted by their own department and protected only by the crime family and an underground conspiracy nut, all while they chase the truth the city buried. And the truth is uglier than they imagined. It turns out reptiles were once a huge part of Zootopia, until the powerful Lynxley family stole the work of a brilliant reptile scientist, framed her, and erased every trace of reptiles from the city's history, so they could be the heroes instead. The real villain isn't the strange snake everyone feared at all. It's the sweet, harmless-looking face the whole city already trusted. It builds to a brutal climax, where that trusted face finally shows his teeth, poisoning Judy and leaving her and Gary to die, until Nick makes a desperate leap of faith to save them both. They expose the lie. The reptiles are finally welcomed back into the story they were written out of, and Nick and Judy come out of the side closer than they've ever been. And underneath the talking animals, it's quietly handing kids a heavy lesson that the comfortable version of history is often a cover-up. And the brave thing is to drag the real story back into the light, even when it makes everyone look bad. 9 years is long enough to kill the love for almost anything, so a Zootopia sequel this late could have easily flopped. Instead, it came back to a 96% audience score and an A cinema score, matched everything people loved about the original, and proved the magic never left. I think the fanbase agrees it showed Zootopia was never a one-time fluke, and if Zootopia proved a long wait could still pay off, our last movie proved a single sequel could save an entire studio. Inside Out 2. For a few years there, it really looked like Pixar had lost it. The studio that once made everyone cry over toys and bugs and a grumpy old man's balloon house had stumbled through a string of movies that just didn't connect. And people started whispering that the magic was gone for good. Then came Inside Out 2. It drops us back into the head of Riley, except now she's a teenager. And puberty hits her control room like a wrecking ball. A whole new crew of emotions comes storming in, led by Anxiety, a jittery, wide-eyed bundle of nerves who's convinced she's the only one who could protect Riley from the future. So Anxiety takes over headquarters, boxes up Joy and the original emotions, and starts rebuilding Riley's entire sense of self around fear and worry. And it works, in the worst possible way. Anxiety pushes Riley harder and harder to fit in to be perfect, until it all comes crashing down, and Riley has a full-blown panic attack, sitting in the penalty box at a hockey game with her heart pounding out of her chest, and no way to make it stop.
No. I can fix it.
For a kid's movie to freeze everything and show that, honestly and without flinching, was something nobody saw coming. The way out isn't Joy shoving Anxiety aside and grabbing back control. It's the two of them finally letting go and letting Riley feel all of it at once. The joy and the fear and the sadness and the worry. Because that messy pile of feelings is what actually makes her who she is. And that's the truth the movie hands every kid watching, that growing up isn't about staying happy. It's about making room for the hard stuff too, and that the anxious voice in your head isn't your enemy. It just can't be allowed to run the whole show. It landed with a 96% audience score, the best in Pixar's entire history, an A cinema score, and a wave of people of every age saying it understood something about them they'd never seen a cartoon get right. The studio everyone had counted out was suddenly back on top, and I think the fan base agrees this is the one that reminded the world Pixar could still reach right into your chest. And if you want something else to watch, you're in luck. I created a custom playlist full of videos I know you'll love. No need to go searching. Just click the button on screen now and enjoy.